Big day here on Locked On Blue Devils. Joey Baker makes a very late decision to enter the NCAA transfer portal. What does that mean for his future? Trevor Keels had everybody looking at him at the NBA Draft Combine. Could he be returning to Duke for another season, or will he stay in the NBA Draft? We'll talk about all of that coming up on today's edition of Locked On Blue Devils.
Dick Vitale, hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with JJ Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into a Tuesday edition of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us on today's show. We've got a lot to get into here on the program. We'll talk about Joey Baker's decision to enter the transfer portal. Trevor Keels did a great job at the NBA Draft Combine. AJ Green had a visit to Duke. We've got a lot to discuss in the Duke basketball world. And for the second straight day, I've got my buddy Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast here with us. Follow me on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_ and follow the show on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils. Be sure to subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and review, and also subscribe to our YouTube page. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Devils your first watch and listen each and every day. Josh Cox now with us, and buddy, we were texting back and forth a little bit towards the end of last week, and you actually broke the news to me that Joey Baker was entering the transfer portal. Like, your first text to me caught me completely off guard, man.
Yeah, I mean, that hit, no one was expecting to see that. And you know how that news travels now with social media, between text messages and just checking Twitter and seeing things going on. I really, really was shocked to see it. I didn't believe it either. I had a buddy of mine, one of our podcast co-hosts, Jamie Holt, texted me, and I was like, man, I had to go Google, go on Twitter and search. And sure enough, Joey Baker entering the transfer portal, kind of out of nowhere, It
was completely out of nowhere. Like, it was past the deadline, as a lot of people brought it to our attention. There was the big deadline that we were talking about because players had to make that NBA draft declaration decision and also a transfer portal decision. Now the word out there is that Joey Baker should be able to waive that because he is a graduate. He does have his degree. He's using a COVID-19 year of eligibility to go and look elsewhere, but it really felt like he was going to be a part of the mix for this Duke basketball team. And a lot of people want to talk about the AJ Green visit, kind of in the timing of all of this coming together and that sort of thing. I don't want to look from that angle specifically, but I mean, what do you think made this move happen? Or was it that?
Well, something happened.
Yeah.
We can only speculate. But something happened from May the 1st or from the last day of March, right? The last day of April until this past week. Something happened in that time. And there's only a couple of things that could have happened. And one of them would be, did word get back to him that Keels is coming back, right? That would have been one thing, but I don't see that, being the thing. And then the obvious one is the AJ Green visit. But once again, man, I don't think the Duke has been quiet about the fact that they're looking in the transfer portal for help on the wing. That should not come as a shock to anyone. And so I don't know what happened, but something happened. And Joey felt like it was the best thing for him to move on. And I hate that because I'm a fan of Joey Baker. I like Joey a lot. And I hate to see him go, but I'm pulling for him. I'm rooting for him for sure.
In a lot of ways, I think people are surprised that he didn't leave earlier in the offseason or even years ago in his time in Durham. I mean, it was really weird. He was a part of the class with Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett, Cam Reddish, Trey Jones, a tier under those guys. And then Joey Baker was the fifth member of that recruiting class. If you think back on his time in Durham, he actually came a year early. He reclassified in high school to join the group early And then with 4 games left in the season, Duke burned his red shirt, which had a lot of people scratching their heads at that decision that was made. So to sum up his time in Durham, it's definitely been one of the more stranger careers, I think you could say, for former Duke men's basketball players, but a really fun guy to root for, good shooter with the basketball. His numbers continue to develop throughout his career, but he really did have a strange timeline there on the Duke basketball team.
Yeah, I understand that we're talking about high level Division I basketball, right? So I get it that you got to check your feelings at the door and whatnot, and you got to earn your playing time and all these different things. I just feel like there's not been a player, in my opinion, that's stayed at Duke for 4 years that's kind of gotten the raw end of the deal. It seems like Joey. You know that you mentioned the red shirt burn. It wasn't just that they burned his red shirt late in the season. It was that they burned his red shirt and then they did not stick with him. They burned it for I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 30 minutes or less that he played that season of game time. And that's why they burn it. And that just blew my mind. He shot right at 40% from three. The 3 seasons he actually played, he shot right at 40% each season. And that's all you can ask for of a guy who's paid to shoot, if you want to call it that way. He's paid to shoot. And I understand his defensive liability. Okay. I'm gonna make an unpopular statement here, I guess, because I made it on Twitter and people came after me. But I believe he was just kind of mishandled. Maybe mistreated is not the word. Mishandled. Because here's the thing. If being a stout defender is what keeps you on the court at Duke, then I got questions about a bunch of players.
Sure.
As to why they've stayed on the court at Duke. Because let's face it, defense has been a weak point of a Mike Krzyzewski coach team over the last few years. So, like, it cannot be simply he can't play defense. I would argue that November, December, and January, Jeremy Roach couldn't play any defense.
Right.
But Jeremy Roach stayed in the game and kept playing. For some reason, Joey Baker's leash was very, very short. Very short. And I hate it for him because I do feel like that Joey could be, if someone really believed in him and kind of gave him a longer leash, I mean, I think he's the kind of guy that could get on a roll shooting the ball and hit 3 or 4 threes, in a really quick amount of time and really turn the tide of a game. I just don't know if he ever got that opportunity that much.
Joey Baker averaged 4.1 points per game, shot 37.9% from three-point range in 89 career games for Duke, wearing that number 13 jersey. He took it right after Matt Jones wore it while winning a national championship for the Blue Devils. And when Duke made the announcement, Coach K provided a quote, "It was an absolute pleasure having Joey in our program. He's been a joy to coach and a great leader. I'm thrilled he'll be earning a degree from one of the greatest institutions in the world, and I wish him all the best," end quote. The internet found it absolutely wild that Coach K was the one that was quoted in Duke's release.
I think that's been consistent with what the other guys
He
have.
played for him for 4 years. I don't know why
Yeah, I don't see that. I don't see that being
quote.
Yeah, I don't see that being an issue at all. I was completely comfortable with that. In fact, I mean, honestly, if it wasn't Coach K, you're kind of wondering, like, okay, what's going on here? Like, this was his coach, like you said, for 4 years, it was his head coach, and so, all these statements, though, I don't know. Only thing I will say, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I will say this: something happened between April the 30th and last week. Something happened. And we can speculate if it was AJ Green.
Yeah.
We can speculate if it was Trevor Keels. We can speculate there's a wide variety of other things that it could be. But at the end of the day, he made that decision, and he probably had to know ahead of time that he would be granted that waiver, being a grad transfer with the COVID year and knowing he could play immediately. I don't think he would have made that decision thinking he may have to sit out. But anyway, once again, I'm a Joey Baker fan. I hope Joey goes somewhere, has an incredible final season, and just shows kind of what he could do. And wherever he lands, I'll be pulling for him.
Well, we're speculating on today's show. So we're going to talk about the AJ Green angle and this and more in just a moment here on Locked On Blue Devils. Today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils here on this Tuesday, May 24th, 2022, is brought to you by our buddies at BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs. Tonight, we've got Game 4 between the Golden State Warriors and Dallas Mavericks. Get all the lines and information that you need for that one at betonline.net. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information from live betting, playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, welcome back into Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside Josh Cox from Duke Football Talk Section 17 podcast. AJ Green is the transfer from Northern Iowa. His dad is an assistant coach at Iowa State. It has been believed to be a two-school race between the Duke Blue Devils and the Iowa State Cyclones. This past weekend, AJ Green was on an official visit to Duke. It went incredibly well. Josh, you and I are always in the know on the Duke community, the Duke chat, the Duke circles, message boards, whatever it may be. We are well aware of the fact that there are some 24/7 sports crystal ball projections now in Duke's favor for AJ Green. But let's kind of talk about this angle and this shooting guard saga that's taking place right now for Duke.
Yeah, I mean, it is obvious that John Shire believes that the other four positions in that starting lineup are pretty solidified. And that two guard is going to be either Trevor Keels or it's going to be a grad transfer. Now, we just got finished talking about our guy, Joey Baker. My personal opinion is I don't think that was necessarily ever a consideration. I believe it was always going to be Trevor Keels or a grad transfer. My opinion. And so we've had several different names, that have kind of come up in the transfer portal, and Duke fans have paid attention. And then we've one by one seen those guys commit elsewhere. And this AJ Green angle, because he's basically down to just Duke and Iowa State, has really got Duke fans excited. And listen, I understand wanting to play for your dad. I get that. I believe there's something to that. Didn't work out so well for the last guy who chose to not come to Duke and go play for his father, Mr. Patrick Baldwin Jr.,
Yes.
who had a very disappointing season. His dad got fired during that season. And so I don't know. I mean, it's very difficult, man. I mean, think about that. It's very difficult for this kid to come on campus at Duke, to look up at Cameron Indoor Stadium and see those 5 banners there, to know that while all the media attention was on Duke last year because of Coach K, all the media attention is going to be on Duke again this year because it's John Shire's first season. And knowing that you're going to get to play at the highest level and you're going to get that exposure. And if you are that good, which I believe he is that good, you're going to be able to do that in front of a lot more eyeballs than you would at Iowa State. And so I'd have a hard time saying no if I was AJ Green.
Well, that's the thing. When you look at this and making the decision that he is, and again, AJ Green has not made that decision, it feels as though we're getting closer to that decision being made for Mr. AJ Green, but not there yet. When you're talking about playing at Iowa State versus Duke, from a basketball perspective, what's best? What's the greater move? It's Duke basketball. It's not even a question. I will give credit to Iowa State for the turnaround that they had this past season. They had 2 wins in the year right after COVID. 2 overall wins on their season, and then made a run all the way to the Sweet 16. Phenomenal turnaround there for Iowa State. But still, Duke is the greater move. The angle in all of this that is so surprising is just the fact that his dad is on the coaching staff. As a son myself, as a son yourself, Josh, you've got a couple of little girls that doesn't really apply in this scenario. But the idea of playing for your dad at that level, I think, is really hard to sway people not to go in that direction. Personally speaking, I don't know how I wouldn't go play for my father if that option were on the table. But it's a really good alternate option for AJ Green to go play basketball at Duke. I guess I'm just surprised because while the thought was out there, while the chatter was there, I really didn't think that there would be this much momentum going in Duke's favor.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe if you're looking at the exposure and the brand and the global footprint that Duke has, maybe as a father, you have that private conversation that maybe you would never share until years from now, where you say, as much as I'd love for you to come to Iowa State and play here, it's going to be the best move for your career to go to Durham. And once again, as a father, I could see that coming into play. Like, as much as I want you to stay here with me, it's best for you that you go. And so, maybe that's the case. But like you said, I mean, we're getting crystal ball. Shout out Adam Rowe. We're getting crystal ball to Duke. And correct me if I'm wrong here too. I'm just to clarify for those that are listening and watching. I believe does he have 2 years, because he had a hip injury, not last year, the year before last, and he only played like 3 games. So like, I'm assuming there's a medical red shirt in there.
I'll have to verify him. Ryan Young, we know, does have 2 years of eligibility coming over from Northwestern. AJ Green, I'm not as certain on that. I was under the assumption that it was just 1 season, but I don't know. Let me see.
Yeah, I'm looking at honestly, like, his basketball reference stats and stuff, and I'm seeing the 3 seasons, and I'm wondering, is there like a COVID season medical?
And there should be. Yeah, there absolutely
and then a grad
should be.
transfer. Like, I don't know if that matters. Anyway, I'm not up on all the eligibility there. All I know is this: if Duke were to land AJ Green and he were to be the starting 2 guard in our system, we're getting a guy who's consistently played high volume minutes. He has consistently shot the ball well from both 2-point range and 3-point range. Once again, shooting at that around 40%, between 38 and 40% clip, for his career. Averaging, let's see, points per game, 19.7, 18.8 in his last 2 complete seasons and full seasons there at Northern Iowa. And so that's the kind of player we're getting. Obviously, we've already made note of this. Coach's son, a basketball coach's son. And so there's a lot to be said. I believe if we do land AJ Green, it gives us an edge that we may not have with anyone else there. And so, hey, I mean, as with all these solid grad transfers, the more of them that can come to Duke and give us 21-year-old men, 22-year-old men on this roster to pair with some of these 18 and 19-year-old freshmen, the more of those we get, the better.
I think I'm seeing more of just 1 year of eligibility left for AJ Green the more I look at it. But point still remains on everything that's saying here. Yeah. And it's wild that I'm in such a Duke men's basketball space that for the last 3 weeks, when you say AJ Green, I'm thinking of a shooting guard from Northern Iowa that is a 2-time reigning player of the year in the Missouri Valley Conference, when there is an AJ Green who happens to be a Pro Bowl wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals for so many years.
Probably a future Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I mean, but all of a sudden, I don't think of him anymore. I only think of this possible transfer target for Duke. Let's take one more time out here on Locked On Blue Devils, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Trevor Keels. He was turning heads at the NBA Combine. That's next, right here on Locked On Blue Devils. Want to let you know about Locked On Sports Today. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Devils your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest sports stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Final segment here on today's edition of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. My, oh my, Josh, when we take a look at Trevor Keels, people are loving what he was able to do at the NBA Draft Combine this past week.
Yeah, it was an interesting week, wasn't it? Because Jonathan Givony tweeted out his measurables, right? So we shout out Mark Williams, right, by the way, who measures off the charts. And Trevor's was not great, right? And so, like, the beginning of the combine, it's like, oh man, this doesn't look good. Like, bottom echelon of like the standing vertical and like all these different things. I mean, and we all know this. I mean, we've seen Trevor's body makeup. He's not the most defined and ripped guy either. He's strong as an ox, but that's not his thing. And so as a Duke fan who really would like to see Trevor come back for a second season, I was kind of like, wow, his measurements aren't great. But then he worked out for teams and went through multiple different, skill sets and things like that. And the video that's emerged from that, it was like peak Trevor Keels. It was like,
Yeah.
it was incredible. And then you had, and Paulo, by the way, just in case Duke fans are wondering just what kind of kid he is, the fact that he's at that combine and he's cheering on his teammates. He did the same thing for Wendell, but he tweeted that he had not seen NBA execs and front office guys so excited and applauding like he had for when Trevor got done with his workouts. And so then, as a Duke fan who wants Trevor Keels to come back, I'm thinking, oh man, it's done now. It's done, So he did show out. I will say this: a couple of small things that I saw this past week about the combine. He did not participate in 5-on-5, and a lot of times guys who have a first round guarantee from a team will not participate in 5-on-5. So I think all signs are pointing towards Trevor Keels staying in the draft and being drafted sometime in that late first round.
Yeah, I think it turns into just the biggest shock at this point if Trevor Keels were to say, I'm going to come back and play another season at Duke. It just does not seem like it's going in that direction because he's been so great at the combine. And really, we know what kind of player he can be. He's going to get that opportunity to develop at the next level. We're coming up on a deadline, so hopefully we can get a decision officially here in a couple of days because that's just the one thing I want in this, Josh. Like, I just want to put this to bed, not have to speculate, and really be able to root on Trevor Keels and turn our attention into the fact that only once before in the history of the NBA draft has a school had 5 first-round selections, and Duke would have an opportunity then at that point to become the second school ever to do that behind Kentucky in 2010.
Yeah, can I make a bold prediction here? Like something we might want to revisit in 5 years?
Okay.
Here's a bold prediction. Whoever drafts Wendell Moore after Trevor Keels is going to be the winner of all of this. And this is nothing against Trevor Keels. This is all positive Wendell Moore. Wendell Moore is more athletic. Wendell Moore is as good of a defender. Let's just say their defense is equal. Wendell Moore shot the 3 at 40%. Wendell Moore has 3 years, even though he's young, 3 years of college under his belt, has played in bigger games, has been a team captain under Mike Krzyzewski. I just think we're going to look 5 years into this, and I'm not saying that Trevor Keels will not be successful.
Yeah.
I just believe we're going to look 5 years into this, and we may see Wendell Moore playing a role like Gary Trent Jr. Or Grayson Allen, and we may not see Trevor Keels playing that role on a team in 5 years. And that's my hot take. My hot take is somehow Wendell Moore Jr. is listed as being drafted behind him. And I don't understand because the measurables are there for Wendell, the wingspan, the jumping ability, the shooting ability. I don't get it. It's like he's being penalized for being in school 3 years, even though he was basically a 16-year-old kid, evidently, when he showed up to Durham for his freshman season. So that's my take. My take is in 5 years from now, whoever drafted Wendell Moore, wherever he is playing, he will have a more successful career. And that does not mean Trevor Keels is not going to be successful. It means that I'm high on Wendell Moore.
It doesn't. It wasn't a Mailbag Monday episode when we asked that question before, but I posed that question, I think probably to Brendan Marks and a couple of other guys on the show. I'm trying to recall who's going to be the better pro between those two guys. And I think a lot of people are starting to trend more in the Wendell Moore realm. I know the question was asked very frequently of the two guys, Wendell Moore Jr. and Trevor Keels, who's more likely to return to Duke for a second season. But I can't wait to see what Wendell's NBA career looks like. Josh, as always, this has been a whole lot of fun. Remind folks where they could find your work and about the Section 17 podcast.
Yeah, certainly. You can find us on Twitter at Duke FB Talk. On Facebook, you can search Duke Football Talk. And then wherever you listen to podcasts, it's called the Section 17 podcast. We'd love to have you subscribe, rate and review us. Rate and review Locked On Blue Devils, what the good work JJ does here as well. Duke Athletics, we need to be talking more and more we talk Duke football. JJ talks everything. But the more you rate and review, the more Duke athletics gets out there in the podcast world. And so that would be a huge favor that both of us would ask of you right now.
Josh, I certainly do appreciate the time. I hope you enjoy the Memorial Day weekend coming up, and look forward to talking to you again soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ. Have a great day, man.
That's my buddy Josh Cox from Duke Football Talk Section 17 podcast joining us here on the show. And that's going to wrap up another edition of the program. Joey Baker entering the transfer portal. Big news for Duke. What does it mean for Trevor Keels and AJ Green? We hope you feel better about that question after listening to our conversation. All right, we'll be back with you tomorrow on a brand new edition of Locked On Blue Devils. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you then. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.